So hi everyone, I'm Sandra Arevalo once again with you. Thank you for being with us. I'm the Director of Community Health and Wellness at Montefiore Nyack Hospital. And today we have a very nice topic is autism. And just in talking right now with our expert of the day, Suzanne Buchauer. She just told me like this is the great time to be talking about autism because next month is Autism Awareness Month and we're going to hear more about it from her. But let me just introduce her. We're very blessed to have her today because she's a passionate Davis dyslexia executive function skills and autism approach facilitator. And I know that it sounds like a mouthful, and that's the reason why we're going to be learning a lot from her today. And she decided to become an educator at the age of 15, believe it or not, after being inspired by a phenomenal teacher in high school. This teacher, named Mr. Wilson, appealed to all learning types and helped both atypical and neurodiverse students feel welcome, activated, and motivated to learn. So Suzanne has earned a BA in English with minors in psychology, art, and sociology, double secondary teacher certification in English and German. Yes, she speaks German, and MA in education. Her university education was done in Germany and the United States. She is a full-service Davis program facilitator. She offers Davis Reading Mastery Programs, Davis Math Mastery Programs, Attention Mastery Programs, and Davis Young Learner Program for 5 to 7-year-olds. Davis Executive Function Skill Concepts for Life Program, and the Davis Autism Approach Programs. So you might be wondering, what is all of this? So Suzanne is gonna explain that to us today through her presentation. She also offers all these programs in English and German in case one of you speaks German and would like to have it in your native language. And you know, we're gonna hear from her. Just a reminder to all of our attendees, please load us with questions. We're gonna get all of your questions answered after her presentation. So start writing your questions in the chat, in the Q&A, anything that comes to your mind, any comments. I'll be interacting with you during the presentation and then later on with Suzanne after she ends her slideshow. So Suzanne, thank you for being here. It's really great to have you. It's not your first time with us. The last time you were here, we loved it as well. And we have a lot to learn from you today about autism.
All right. Yeah, thank
there
you
are so
so
many more
much.
people, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Diagnosed with autism lately. So interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, 1 in 44 actually nowadays. So it's becoming more and more common, the diagnosis that is. But I wanted to take an opportunity to thank you as well, Sandra Arevalo, for your service to the community with these community chats. It's just a wealth of information. And I told you offline that I go back and listen to a lot of the webinars that you have when I can't see them during the day. And it's just a wealth of information. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
And also for all of you out there who have joined us today, I am very interested in connecting with you and getting into a conversation with you. As Sandra mentioned, you can send your questions in through the Q&A and I'll do my best to answer them right after this slideshow. So let's get started. Life concepts for autism, a pathway to full participation in the life that the individual chooses. As mentioned, Autism Awareness Month is April. And so I'm very excited to bring this to you just now at the end of March. Let's start with the basic question of what is autism? Autism is a developmental condition. Challenges may include communicating with others, sensory processing overwhelm, and frustrations with relationships, amongst other symptoms and traits and characteristics. The spectrum ranges from mild to very severe. Each individual is completely different, of course, and has a different profile. Autistic individuals think differently, often visually, with feelings, sometimes non-verbally, sometimes in patterns, sometimes with numbers, with colors. So here again, every single human born on this earth is different and has their own strengths and talents and gifts and their own challenges. So I just love Autism Awareness Month because learning more helps us prevent mistreatment. The acronym in the parentheses is ACEs, and that stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, which is something that anyone can experience, of course, but it is documented that autistic individuals, because of their differences, can experience a higher number of adverse childhood experiences. And we'll go into that in just a minute. I would like to introduce the man behind the Davis autism approach and all of the programs that he developed, the last of which was the Davis autism approach. He is the engineer. He is the one that designed it. And I'd like to tell you a story about him. So you can see on the left here the plastiline. This is the material which is used during the program. And this particular model shows a mom with 5 children. Ronald Davis was one of 5 children, and he was one of the younger ones. So when he was born, his mom had already had a couple of children and saw how they developed. And when he came into the picture, she noticed that there were quite a few differences that were very different. He was nonverbal. He was not responding the way the other ones did with eye contact, etc. And he was really there physically, but just not present with her in any way. At the time, which was approximately 80 years ago, the word autism had not been used yet. And so what they called Ronald Davis was a Canner's baby. Dr. Canner was the one who wrote down the original traits and characteristics, and that is why children born at that time were called the Canner's babies, having the Canner syndrome. His mother was not going to treat him differently, and so as a result, I'm just going to tell you sort of a fast story of his life. So as a result of that, she sent him to school. Although they labeled him at that time, they told her he's pretty much irreversibly educationally retarded. That was what they told her, and she wasn't going to have any of that. So she sent him straight into the school. She insisted. In the school, he was placed in the back of the room, in the corner, with his nose to the corner and a dunce cap on. So here you have a pretty extreme case of ACEs. And not only in the school setting, but also in his life at home, he was at the mercy of his older brother and his father, who didn't like him being different and tried, and so he was mistreated at home as well. So moving on in his life, like I said, the first 11 years were in the classroom. By the way, at the end of this 30-minute presentation, I'm going to show you a clip of Ronald Davis speaking about his life. It's just 5 minutes, so I really look forward to showing you that as well. At the age of 12, he came out of the autistic void, which is what he called the place he was before he came out of it, into a world of pain and chaos. And what he did at that point was he looked around, became more aware of his environment, and he realized he was different. He couldn't do the things other people could do, and those things were many. And he discovered in his backyard a way to model out of the mud that he made with water and with the red dirt. And he started making things that he doesn't have, that his brothers had, for example, like a pocket knife, like a watch. He made those out of the mud. And he also wanted to be able to read, and he saw that they were using letters. So he was making letters out of the clay. And so his mother noticed that, got a speech pathologist, and they did work with him, and he was able to speak. And they realized that he is not educationally retarded, but they did say to him, "This is about all we can do for you." Well, he wasn't going to have any of that, and he went on so now we're going to jump forward in his life to his 30s. In 1980, he discovered a way to address his dyslexia, because you see, he was not only autistic, he was also dyslexic. That's why my website is dyslexiaworks.com, because I came into this through the dyslexia programs, and now I have all the education for all the programs, as mentioned. Once he discovered his own way to shut off disorientations and be able to read, he established the Reading Research Council with Dr. Fatima Ali, an educational psychologist. And after hundreds of successful programs, they began designing how to best bring them into the public for people who wish to utilize the correction program. Training workshops were offered, and the book down below, The Gift of Dyslexia, was published. So that was the beginning of his journey. He then wrote the book called The Gift of Learning, which goes into other areas of dyslexia related to that same way of thinking, which would be the math challenges, dyscalculia or acalculia for that matter, writing challenges or acalculia, not being able to do it at all, as well as dyspraxia and ADD, ADHD, so the attention mastery program. He realized that his work was not complete, and he had more work to do before he retired, and that work was this book, the third one, Autism and the Seeds of Change, which we're talking about today. So he designed and engineered the concepts for life for autism, and in 2004, Lorna Timms in New Zealand took the first young boy through the program. This is just a little information on the side. I lived in Australia when I started my training, and Lorna was my trainer. So I feel really, really blessed and thankful for that, because it was extremely thorough and just amazing. Then the licensing began in 2008 after a meeting where they decided how the licensing and the program was best delivered to people in the different ways. There are parent workshops. The book was published that we're going to talk about today. And we now have the workshops as you see them today at the Ron Davis Autism Foundation. So 2020, the Ron Davis Autism Foundation was established. So you can see this is a fairly new program. And for those of you who are interested, there is very recent research, which I wanted to bring a slide today about the results, but I wasn't given the green light because it hasn't been published yet, but it is about to come out, and I just can't wait to scream it from the mountaintops on the results, because they are extremely good. Clinical research. So here we have a 12-year-old in the yard doing some work with mud. Ronald Davis said that being autistic is like being everything and nothing at the same time. So as mentioned before, everybody who's born on the earth has gifts, talents, and the unique talents of being autistic are many. Dr. Hans Asperger, who was the one who wrote the traits that were associated with the Asperger syndrome, said that it seems that for success in science or art, a dash of autism is essential. So let's talk about some of the strengths through the lens of talents. Possible strengths can be unique humor, honesty, desire to connect, fair and just, high intelligence, special interests, good memory, focus, and very detail-oriented. This slide here shows the three realms of the human. There is the thought world, which can be inhabited with the autistic individual without the physical world. So the self-awareness of the physical world is not present. There is the physical world, which is connected with cause, effect, and time. So you see, if you don't have those concepts in place, it is hard to connect. Instinctual world, from which emotions are connected with a sense of self-development. So as you can see, these are not integrated at the moment. Ronald Davis recognizes the stages of childhood development, and the grandfather of childhood development was named Piaget. This is just three aspects of childhood development which are addressed in the Davis autism approach, which are essential for the unblocking and the developmental progress. The first one is individuation, which happens around the age of 2. That's when the terrific 2s happen. The boundaries are being set by the child. No, right? Wanting to break away and become separate from the caregivers in their own person. Identity development, which is happening at all times and happening with real world experiences. And social integration. Autism disrupts these phases. So let's think about it like this. If you have dominoes set up and you want them to be knocked over, you hit it on one side, but what if it gets stuck after 2 years? What if the individuation is not completely developed? Well, then the rest of the development can't occur. So what the Davis autism approach does is it creates a foundation for growth, for the individuation to be completed, for the identity development to happen, along with the core identity that the person obviously comes with, and the social integration can then follow. How does this happen? First, we start with the individuation and the self-regulation. And what you're doing here is helping individuals gain an accurate perception and an accurate sense of self so that they can begin to interact with the world. And what is needed in order for this to occur is a stable orientation or point of perception. And you can see down below the boy with headphones on. It starts with what is called auditory orientation. And this is a specially designed sound by Ronald Davis, which is a 3D sound. And I'm not going to go into all of the discovery and the engineering behind that, but yeah, we can do that maybe another time if you want to learn that. Stable orientation methods. There are different orientation methods with the different programs, and depending on the needs of the individual, there are different options, or let's say, yeah, it really depends on the profile of the individual. So this is an example of what it looks like when you first start with the auditory orientation. And this, I love these two pictures actually, because it's sort of like a before and an after shot of someone who looks a little disoriented. The headphones aren't properly on, the gaze is disoriented, and it's less sharp. It's actually a less sharp picture as well, so that kind of helps. And then there's the next picture over here where you can really see the clear body upright, the orientation is happening, the crisp look in the eyes. So the orientation is starting to take hold. Sensory processing challenges can be a huge part of autism. And for those individuals who cannot wear the headphones because they can't tolerate them, there is Ronald Davis designed and engineered NOIT, which is a natural orientation inducing tool. And if you can imagine this, he was making each and every one of them on his living room table and sending them out. So this was before his retirement. He's retired now and not doing that. And so it's going to need to be produced commercially and with upgrades, actually. It's in the process right now. So the individuation process begins, and this can happen differently for different ages. So when adults come, which is very common, it's going to be more subtle than, for example, when a child comes. So when a child comes, it could be quite full on, or it could also be subtle. It's really, there's a huge range. But what some of the consistent changes in behavior that are observed while using the auditory orientation is the terrific twos can start, or terrible twos, however you want to say it. I find it terrific because I think going through individuation is very important. More modesty than usual can be observed, making sounds and words for those who have not been doing that before. More interaction. And this one I wanted to just explain a little bit. The interaction could be more coming from the individual rather than, so for example, a married couple, the man came for his program and the wife was the support person. And she said that he initiated the interactions, the smiles, the looks, more so than just reacting to hers. Then no, setting boundaries, curiosity, starting to use pronouns, which is associated with the external awareness of others and self, trying new things. And this can really be a full range from very subtle to full on. I am. So this is the face of individuation. So when this process is in full swing and the self-regulation tools are used, then what you have is an integration of the thought world, the physical world, and the instinctual world, and a harmonization of those three elements, which are so important to then be able to start working on the identity of development and the social integration. So the process is started and development can continue normally. There are other self-regulation tools besides the auditory orientation of sound, and these are given when appropriate at the appropriate time and can be used in any situation at any time without any support technology. It's just they know how to do it. They've learned how to do it. They've had experience with it. They can do it whenever they want. Out and about, at work, in social situations that used to be awkward or cause anxiety and worry. So the completion of the individuation process is happening or has happened. The modeling begins. And this is the part where we use the plastilina. It starts with the model of self. And there are many parts that are not here in this slideshow. Step 2 is the new foundations, or the identity development. And identity development refers to what normally happens in the development, which is then, like I said, blocked and delayed in autism, so that people can understand how things work more. It's not a puzzle anymore. It's not chaos. It's clear and crisp, and you can actually interact differently. So you can also think about it like this. If you have a core, obviously you come in with a core identity, whatever your identity is. And what the program is actually doing is it's helping with the 40 plus concepts to provide, let's say, files, 40 files, that's the file cabinet in the middle, so that when the experiences are happening, there's some place to put them in an order. Whereas now it's sort of just coming in and it's all random and there's chaos. It's ordered. I personally like the idea of a computer. So let's say your brain is a computer and you come in with a certain program, whatever it is, your core identity. And what you need is an upgrade so that it can, progress beyond what it has already got. Here is a diagram which shows the actual concepts in 3 pyramids. If you look at the bottom, you'll see self. And on the left, you'll see the physical world concepts. In the middle will be the thought world concepts. And on the right are the urge, the instinctual concept, and the emotional concepts. At the top, you have higher order concepts of motivation and ability and control, which can be introduced after all these other concepts are in place. And then comes responsibility, because the whole purpose of this is to help people reach another level, a higher level, and reach their ability to participate fully in life, in the life that they choose. And there are other exercises which happen after this, which I'll show you in just a moment. And once those are all complete, then the social relationship concepts are introduced, and then the program is complete. So let's go through one concept just so that you can get an idea of how this works in real time. So let's say we're going to do the concept of change. What would happen is you've already got your tools, or depending on who it is, like I said, they can be introduced in different times, but what happens is you're going to have your model of self. There's self in the picture, and then looking on to a model which is created. It's a real world model, something that really could happen in the world. And in this case, it's bricks are going to become a tower. And then you have the word change there, either in the clay or in a card, depending on the program. And then that is mastered. It's called concept mastery. It's a process. And once that's done, you get up away from the table and you experience it in the real world. So this is a super important part. Number 2, exploring concepts in the real world. So you're going out, there's a magnifying glass that I've got, if you can see that, and you are exploring and finding change in your environment, either inside or outside. I personally like to go outside a lot. It's so good for all the senses. And then you come back to the table for the simplest form model at the bottom of the pictures here. So building bridges is the last segment after all of the other concepts are completed and other exercises are completed. And this is moving beyond self, because the first pyramids are actually dealing quite a bit with self and filling in all of those concepts, which may not be completely anchored or have not ever been fully addressed. So here are some examples of the relationship concepts. And then we establish relationships and behaviors with others based on trust, belief, agree, and rules. Then based on the situation, the individual is better aware of what is good, bad, and right or wrong for self. Applying these concepts, there are 3 simple steps. After the responsibility segment that I showed you on that earlier diagram, there are exercises where you establish order in the physical environment. So this is done away from the table. Then there's creating new behaviors. This is a really fun exercise, which is done at the table. And developing self-responsibility, this is an exercise which is also done away from the table. What types of programs are available? There are programs for adults. It's called the Davis Autism Approach, and for 8-year-olds to teens. So depending on who you are and what your profile is, within this, there's also other programs. For example, there's an Concepts for Life early years program, which might be applicable for the younger people. And then for non-speaking individuals and very young children, there are two programs called the Stepping Stones 1 and Stepping Stones 2, which would be able to get the entry at their level of ability. So what can you do? You can contact a facilitator. You can do a one-on-one program. That would be, so for example, if an adult wants to do a program one-on-one, that can be done. Or as in this picture, there's a facilitator with a parent and a child. So that would be a partially coached program, depending on the situation and if that's helpful for the participant. If it's not helpful, the support person can leave and just have a one-on-one program. You can also sign up for a workshop if you want to receive training in this approach. And yes, I'm welcoming as many people who want to do that as you want to do that. This is not the same as taking your own individual program, though. So for example, if you're a person who needs a program, signing up for a workshop is not going to be a program for yourself. That's really more training so that you understand how to help someone else. And that would be the beginning of the road to becoming a facilitator. Recommended reading would be Autism and the Seeds of Change. You can buy this anywhere online. It's also available in the local library. So this is the end of the presentation. And as I promised, I wanted to show you a short video before we start the Q&A, if that's okay, Sandra. I'm just it's like a 5-minute video. So let me just get that up. So this right here is, oops, wait a minute. There we go. So this is my website. And I just added this page, actually, Adult Autism ASD. That was last weekend. So check that out if that is of interest to you. And here is the short video I was wanting to show you before we start in with the Q&A. This is Ronald Davis and his journey with autism.
What inspired me to help others with autism is that I am myself autistic, and I know what it feels like, and I know the limitations that exist as a result of it. When I was born, the chances of having autism was 1 in 660,000. So that kind of gives you an idea of how lucky I am. Autism is the real reason that I'm alive. You know, all my life, I'm alive to do work. The work I am to do is to create the foundation for autism. My memory began when I was 12. But I had things in my pocket, and you know, I was walking around. Of course, I was eating, but it was like there wasn't a consciousness that was a part of my being at that point. And when my memory began, I was like coming alive in a world that was full of pain and chaos. The chaos was everything was moving, and mostly my perception was about colors and shapes. And the colors would be swirling and the shapes would be all mixed together. And later, as I began to develop more, the shapes became outlines for colors. And then the colors and the shapes together became pictures or images. And that is essentially the way things work for me now when I think. I don't think with the sounds of words like ordinary people do. My thinking process is in pictures. Because I don't think with the sounds of words, words had like no real importance to me. What was important was the feelings and the colors, which essentially were the meaning. And I could see the colors coming from my mother, my brother, my bosses. Yet when I would give them colors back, they ignored them. They didn't get the ideas, right? And it was my uncle that convinced me that I needed to make the sound that matched the color in order to speak. I discovered that I could mix dirt and water together, and I could make things out of dirt and water. And then when it gets dry, I mean, it can get as hard as a rock almost. So the things that I was interested in, I would make models out of the clay with. When I would make something, I could think with the thing that I made. And that's where the real importance came. Like when I made the concept of consequence, I could think with the idea of consequence. My real dream in life is I wanted to be a real person. And I could see that I wasn't. Other people could read and write. I couldn't. Other people did Peter Pan every day. And I and other people could talk. And I couldn't do that. So my real dream was to be like everybody else. There are times going by where they should be developing certain characteristics that they don't. All knowledge is experiential. They have to create their knowledge. So it's not something you can do to them or for them. They have to do it themselves. And we can know what they need to do and we can lead them into it. But they're the ones that have to do it. And that actually works. Is that we can't do this to these kids. They have to do it themselves. So we have to start with what is there and get them to the point where they want to do it themselves. And then it's almost like you can get out of the way and you can get so far with them and they won't let you take a break. They want to keep going because they make progress minute by minute. So it's a wonderful thing to see. The goal from the beginning with autism was to allow the autistic individuals to experience everything that they can in life. We have something that works. You can either believe us or not believe us, but you're not going to know if it works or not until you see it happening or you become a part of it. So the invitation is take a shot at it. Give it, see if it will produce what it has produced for others. And that's, what have you got to lose?
You're muted.
Thanks for letting me know. Yes, I was just saying that thank you for showing that video. It's touching, at the same time. And it's so much clearer when, for example, when I saw the picture of the boy with the two bodies holding hands and the word with, like, now I get it. It's the visual of the word itself, right? And the feeling, as you were describing in your presentation, is the feeling of the words.
It's not really the word itself. It's the actual 3D concept. And then that's connected with the symbol, which is words. So words are just a symbol for something which is in the real world. It's the real world. They need a 3D visual because that's
how it is. Yeah.
That's how they think.
So we do have a few questions from our attendees before we get there. How do you define autism?
So I defined that at the beginning. Is that one of the questions?
No, that's my own, yeah.
Oh, right. So yeah. So I said that at the beginning of the presentation. So autism has to do with traits and characteristics, and it's associated with challenges in communicating. Either you're nonverbal, or when you are verbal, maybe you're not getting your ideas across. It can also have to do with sensory and perception overload. There's a long list of traits actually in the DSM-5. which are available. And also it can have to do with social relationships and your ability to maintain or keep or even make social relationships. So there's certain things that need to be, certain boxes that need to be ticked off for the diagnosis of autism. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't want to go into all of the traits because there's, quite a few, and every person's different.
Mm-hmm. Are there any that are more, I guess, prominent in people with autism? I just would like to guide some of the parents that might be in attendance today to say, like this could be some of them. So if this is happening, then what do we need to do? Do we need to seek help? Do we go to the doctor? What will be the process of recognizing those signs and then what to do?
Yeah, so like I said, April is Autism Awareness Month, and there is a lot of information out there now in our society. So it's easy to look up online, what are the signs and what do I do? Seeking a diagnosis is a possibility, but also, obviously, if you think that there are developmental delays, you can go to your pediatrician and say, I'm noticing this. I'm noticing, no eye contact. It feels almost painful for them to be touched. They have sensory concerns. They might have repetitive behaviors. They might be stemming, which is flapping of the hands or spinning. That they're doing that to calm themselves. So you don't need to stop that. Mm-hmm. Let them do that if they're doing that. And so if you think there's a developmental delay, the first thing to do is go to your doctor and express those concerns, and then you can seek a diagnosis for that.
And what are the causes for autism? Is there any research around that?
It's unclear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not my job. So my job is actually to help with it. So, actually, if I have someone in an initial consultation, they're saying, but I want to know the cause. I say, well, that's not my area of expertise. I deliver a service, and my service is that I'm a facilitator for the Davis Autism Approach. So if you're coming and you have these traits and you have a diagnosis, that you can, this is an option. This is a treatment option out there. And it is also quite complementary with other options that are out there right now. So it's something that if you see it and you resonate with it as a family, you can definitely check it out.
Mm-hmm. Are there any participants or patients for whom you think this program doesn't work?
That's a great question. This program is not for everybody. That is for sure, because not everyone is a do-it-yourself person. So this is more of a program where you're going to be involved as a parent, if you are a parent with a child with autism, or if you're an adult, you can do the program on your own. If there's a support person in your life, though, it's nice to actually have somebody sort of going along the journey with you, at least understanding what you're doing. So not everyone wants that approach. Some people want a different approach, but there are quite a few people who do want something else, who have done, the approaches that are out there, and they're noticing that they're plateauing or they're not reaching the level that they think is there. I also have calls from people who, for example, are Amish. I had an Amish man call me because they have a different way forward with their medical and what they like. So this resonates with a lot of people who are looking for something a little bit more organic and whole person. But like I said, this is complementary to the triage that's out there right now.
Mm-hmm. And yeah. Suzanne, could we say that this is a cure for autism?
No. I mean, why would you want to cure autism? No, it's that's kind of funny. It was just like the other day when I was putting up some signs for dyslexia, and it says correction program. So they say, why would you want to correct the dyslexia. No, you're not correcting the dyslexia. You're not correcting the autism. What this program does is it unblocks you where you are. You're usually coming in with things like, I'm struggling at work. I've got a great job, but I'm having a hard time relating with my colleagues. I'm scared to go to the next level because there's a lot of relationships that need to be made. I miss social cues. I don't really understand. My wife and I are struggling. I'm suffering with anxiety or with depression. There's actually a group out there, which I read about just this last weekend, of doctors. I think it's called Doctors International with Autism. I'm not quite sure what the acronym is, but it's a lady who, because a lot of doctors are on the spectrum, and it serves them incredibly well because they are dedicated, they are focused, they are excellent at what they do. You want to go to someone who's on the spectrum because they are geniuses in their field, But what happens with these incredibly intelligent people who become experts in their field, like the doctors, is that they reach a point in their life where they are, they need some help with the social. They can get anxiety and depression. And so this would help them, just to relieve them of these symptoms and these problems. So it can really help anybody. But who likes it. So it is an option. And that's what I like. I like the fact that there are options, because not one size fits all for people. And so this is an excellent option, actually, which is extremely effective.
But do you need to have a diagnosis of autism to come to the program? Or, for example, let's say, for example, what you say is right. I know a lot of very, very smart people that are a little odd, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm sure you got something. I tell them,
they may be on the spectrum, but a lot of people don't want a diagnosis. Okay, let's face it. They are smart. They're getting by just fine in life. They're married and their spouse accepts them for who they are. Maybe they've got traits that are annoying, like they want to be alone a lot, or they, cloister themselves in their room and doing their stuff. What's really nice about April being Autism Awareness Month is that you can be aware of that. In fact, I just wrote an article, which I hope to get out soon, on autistic individuals who have helped us with our environment. And so I'm kind of telling ahead of time, but if you look at people like Greta Thunberg, or if you look at people like Temple Grandin, or Patagonia even, who just donated his fortune to climate change. So all of these individuals, Jane Goodall, it's people who are focused to the point where they can go out and do this intense research. They don't necessarily have, they're called geeks or loners when they're in high school. All the geeks, the people who are nerding out on whatever they're doing, those could be people on the spectrum, but not everyone wants to get a diagnosis. So the answer to your question is no, you don't have to have a diagnosis. If someone, the reason why I'm called Dyslexia Works is because I came to this Davis work through a family member who needed a dyslexia program. And the amazing results just helped me to, that launched my career in the Davis world. And what I noticed was a lot of people coming through the door who, were dyslexic, but also had traits of autism. And it was quite a few. And I could tell by seeing who it was in the family. I'm not going to tell them, I think your child is on the spectrum. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, I have a program that I think is going to be helpful. And that way it just helps them. Like, I'm not a diagnostician. That's not what I do. What I do is I help people who come to me with a variety of challenges. But I have to say that a lot of people do come with a diagnosis. So diagnosis is not mandatory. It's not something that everyone is going to seek out. It's not something that every parent is going to seek out. But if you do seek out a diagnosis, there is quite a bit of help out there for you. So I'm not telling you not to get a diagnosis. I'm just saying you don't need one to get help. That's all.
Yeah. And I also feel that, autism is a pretty new diagnosis. So it might be a lot of older people that were never diagnosed. They were never, you know, even evaluated or anything like that. I feel that
exactly. You know, I mean, there was the like I said, the word autism wasn't even used 80 years ago. So it's all relatively, you know, new.
you know,
There is a lot of encouragement to get diagnosis, and I'm not against diagnosis at all. I'm just saying some people come and they maybe don't even want it. Their lifestyle, Amish, whatever, or other people. It's a free society. You know,
yeah.
you can.
And we have a comment here that definitely goes along with what we're talking about. It says, that explains why a few doctors that I have been to are brilliant. However, the bedside manners might be considered a little off.
Yes, that is really interesting as well. I've noticed that as well. A lot of people who are just experts in their field, and you are just dying to meet them.
Yeah.
And then you meet them, and you're kind of disappointed. It's like, gosh, they don't really, you know, they don't socialize with me the way I want to. They don't have conversation with me. All they want to do is talk about their area of expertise, because a lot of them do really just talk about their area of expertise. So that's a really interesting thing. And I also like the fact that if you learn about autism and really look into the traits, the strengths as well as the weaknesses and the challenges, you're gonna notice other people, and then you say, oh, okay, that explains it, and I can feel okay about it. I don't have to just keep telling them they're annoying. I can actually have more compassion and empathy. And like I said earlier, it can lead to less mistreatment the more we know about each other, and we can celebrate our neurodiversity as we celebrate any kind of diversity.
And Suzanne, we have two questions about some of the slides that you show. What is the boy hearing in his headphones?
Okay, yeah, so that is called the auditory orientation sound, lovingly called the ting. And so what that is it is a sound which is a three-dimensional sound which was designed and engineered by Ronald Davis to bring about a stable orientation. And orientation, the way you can understand that is that orientation is a place where your perception, the way you think, the way you perceive the world is accurate. If you are not oriented in your perception of the world, then you're going to be skewed in your perception, and you'll be in a state of which is called disorientation. And if you're in a state of disorientation, you're not going to be harmonized. It's going to be a case where you're where everything is sort of happening randomly, where you don't feel like you're in control, where the thoughts and perceptions are maybe clear at sometimes, unclear at other times. So it is a tool to help with this orientation, or to gain an accurate perception of the world around you.
Interesting. Now, you showed another device that was in the back of a patient. I think it was like
Noit.
Noit.
So that's the natural orientation inducing technology. That is the same sound. It's just that some people have sensory processing overwhelm, and they cannot tolerate wearing earphones on their head. So that's for those individuals. Ronald Davis produced and engineered the Noit.
Okay. Now, how long are the programs that you described, and what is the caregiver's involvement?
So that is depending on the program. So let's just take a regular, 8-year-old to adult, let's say the Davis autism approach, just the regular program that goes through all of those concepts plus the exercises. It would be anywhere from 30 hours to, more, depending on how long people need. So let's say an adult comes for a program, it would probably take 30 to 35 hours. And this could be done intensively, or it can be done spread out over time. So for example, one adult who works wanted an hour or an hour and a half each day before work. And so then you just add that up, 35. So it's probably a couple of months to get it done. With children, it can take longer simply because of their developmental stage. Also, you know, if they're in school, how their parents can schedule it in. The question about involvement, it also depends on the age, the severity, and the caregiver. So I worked with a 38-year-old who was also completely illiterate, and her caregiver needed to be there, her mom, in order to just help out with things. But also having a support person or caregiver is really important for being able to carry out the basically use what is learned in everyday life. For a child, I suggest that the parent you can have a drop-off program if the child is willing to stay, but I really like to have parents there if possible, so that they can go along with the whole program and learn along with it, so that they can do it at home, especially the explorations after the program day. So as you can see, it's very flexible and very, but the time commitment is going to be anywhere from 30 to 60 hours, depending on the age, the severity. Yeah.
Okay. Now
it's very flexible.
Just to wrap up, we have 2 comments. I love what you say about diagnosis, that people don't have to have one or go for a diagnosis, just look for help with what they experience as troublesome. Someone else says, excellent presentation. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for this very informative presentation. And I couldn't agree more. Very informative. Autism is definitely not something that a lot of people know about. We know very little. It's great that we're having Autism Month next month. So please be on the lookout for a lot of information. Let's get informed about this. So
can I say something about that? I noticed that the United Nations had quite a few presentations. So you can go to the United Nations website. You can go to your local Autism Society and Autism Association sites. There's a lot of information, and go to the web and get yourself informed. What are the traits? There are even self-tests. So, you know, there are
that's great to know.
Lots of ways to start getting to go. And if you need a diagnosis because you want services, absolutely. I'm not against diagnosis at all. I'm just saying people come with and without, and I'm fine with either way. I'm just here to help.
Well, that's great. So thank you so much. It says you have a very nice speaking style. So thank you. We learned a lot, and I couldn't finish with a better comment on that. So I think we all learned a lot. Next week, everyone, managing multiple sclerosis is stressors for patients, caregivers, and family members. Another one of those diseases that are on the rise, either because it's being diagnosed more. What's going on there? So we have a doctor explaining all of that to us and how to manage. How great is that? See you next week. Suzanne, thank you. Thank you to all of my attendees. See you next Thursday. Bye.
Righty. Bye-bye.